بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So what I did last time and what I'm going to do today is a revision of Kitab al-Tahara, of the chapter of purification or purity. It's an important chapter. It talks about issues of wudu, the different topics surrounding wudu, like masih al-khuffayn, wiping over slippers and over casts. Talks about ghusl, purificatory showers or washes. And it talks about what is pure in general and what is not. What are the types of najasa that leave the body and when it's okay to pray and when it's not. So it's an important jurisprudent chapter to know. And it's very specific to rituals and to daily practices. So we stopped last time after the last thing we studied was al-ightisalat al-masnuna, the recommended purificatory showers. So there are certain situations where you have to have a ghusl, and we talked about the different reasons. Make sure you revise them. Make sure you remind yourself of what causes you to have a ghusl, and make sure you know what the obligatory actions of a ghusl are, and make sure you know what the recommended actions of a ghusl are. And to go back to that if you find yourself, go back and listen to to these recordings and go back to the text until you are 100% sure on what we're going to be writing some stuff, so maybe it's better for you to be able to see what the obligatory actions of ghusl are and what the recommended actions of ghusl are. Now, today we're going to start with fasl, the chapter of والمسح على الخفين جائز بثلاثة شرائط. And wiping over the slippers or over leather socks is permissible with three conditions. You need three conditions. First, let me write this down because I'm trying to make maybe a few. You can use this as a summary later on. المسح. So this is an important part of Tahara. We go through this almost every day. I'm going to talk about, of course, I'm not going to go into the details of the different madhahib here because I did that in the first time around. So if you want to know what the different schools of thought said about this, and if you want to know if there's more opinions around certain issues that make it easy, go back to that and you can find the details. I'm just going to explain what Imam Shafiee said right now because that's what we're studying. So this is permissible, but we have three conditions. There are three conditions for this to be permissible. One, أن يبتدئ لبسهما بعد كمال الطهارة. Right? The conditions. Number one, wearing them, the leather socks, wearing them after completing wudu. That's the first one. So you wear them after you complete your wudu. Right? You have wudu, you just made wudu, you wear them. Number two, وأن يكونا ساترين لمحل غسل الفرض من القدمين. And for the socks, to cover the obligatory part of the foot that needs to be washed during wudu. So it has to cover from the ankles to the toes. None of that can be apparent. None of that can be exposed. If you're wearing a leather sock, but you can see your toes are out there, or your ankles are apparent, then that doesn't count. You have to take them off altogether. So you have to. So some types of socks, I've seen them. Like they kind of start from here. Like I don't know why people even buy them. They don't even seem to do it. Yeah. So that doesn't work. That doesn't count, right? No, that does because both ankles are covered, or maybe not. Maybe the other one is not. Yeah, so that probably wouldn't work. No, and of course for the Shafi'i that doesn't work at all because that's not even a leather sock. That's a regular sock. But now we're talking. Of course, when we talk about this, we understood that the Imam Ahmed has a different opinion regarding socks themselves, and that's what a lot of people take, and I'm okay with that. But I'm talking about Imam Shafi'i talked about, and Imam Malik and Abu Hanifa. None of them accept regular socks. They talk about leather ones, meaning that they cannot, water can't go through them. But Imam Ahmed had a different understanding of the issue, and I tend to side with that understanding, or I take that rukhsah as long as you meet the conditions. So the second condition is that it has to cover the foot, ankles to toes. That's the second condition. Third condition, وأن يكونا مما يمكن تتابع المشي عليهما. And they have to be thick, enough to walk with. Meaning they have to be something you can walk around with, and they're not going to tear. They're not made out of material that will tear if you walk with them. Meaning they have to be basically from fabric that we have right now. Meaning the socks that you wear are from fabric that will not tear when you're walking around with, right? And they shouldn't have a tear in them themselves. So the idea here is that they're thick enough to have a tear, meaning no tears. Okay. So this is what Imam Shafiee accepts as or looks at the conditions of having the khuffayn. And for him, they have to be, the concept of khuffayn for him, the word khuffayn for the Imam Shafiee and Abu Hanifa and Malik is that they have to be leather. They have to be from material that does not permit water to go through them. And we had a little discussion about to what extent that is, but generally speaking, all right? So what we're wearing right now, if you put water on it, it will go through, water will go through, it'll touch your skin. So for the Jumhur, that doesn't count. For Imam Ahmed, because he accepts the concept of al-jawrabayn, which are socks, that's why there's a rukhsa, or there's an permissibility of us doing it on these socks, but not for the Shafi'iyya. All right. ويمسح المقيم يوما وليلة والمسافر ثلاثة أيام بلياليهن. And the person who is not traveling will wipe over his slippers or leather socks for 1 day and a night for 24 hours, almost exactly 24 hours, or for 5 consecutive prayers. Right? And if you're traveling, for 3 days and 3 nights, for 15 consecutive prayers. All right, and I explained in how you calculate the timing. I spent a lot of time doing that. So if you go back to the videos if you want to understand exactly how to calculate the timings, because there's a lot of questions regarding that, and I answered a lot of them. I don't want to go through all of it because it'll take a lot of time. Yes, go ahead.
Those socks gotta stay on for 3 days.
Yeah, so we talked about whether if you take them off, do you lose your wudu immediately, or do you lose the ability to do masah on them? So the Jumhur are with the opinion that if you take off the socks, now you can no longer do masah over them. Now I accept the more current ijtihad, or the modern ijtihad, that if you take them off but you don't lose your wudu and you wear them on again, then you can continue wiping on them, but only for the original period that you put them on the first time, not this time. I'm okay with that, but again, that's not what the Jumhur sees. Some scholars, for them, if you take off the socks, then you actually lose your wudu immediately for some of them. But again, there's a lot of opinions. Go back to the videos and listen to them again if you want to go in more detail. But for the Shafi'i, if you take off your socks, you take the slippers off, then you can't wipe over them again. That's for the Imam Shafi'i, that's the madhab, that's what the mu'tamad fil madhab, that's what they accept in the madhab. But there are other opinions that are more modern and kind of solo, I guess you could say. So 24 hours for non-travelers and 3 days for travelers. When does it start? When do we start calculating? وابتداء المدة من حين يحدث بعد لبس الخفين. So you start calculating from the moment you lose your wudu after you put on your socks. So you put on the slippers, you have your wudu, right? You start calculating from the moment you lose your wudu, and you have to start wiping. So from the salah that you used it to wipe, you start calculating from the first wipe. So I made wudu and I made full wudu, and then I wore my socks. I don't start calculating now, because right now I haven't wiped yet, right? Let's say I do that for Fajr. Now I'm a self-disciplined guy, and I hold on to my wudu all day long. I don't have to make wudu again. So the calculation hasn't started yet. And then I sleep with my socks still on, and I wake up for Fajr, and I do masah for Fajr. Then I start counting 24 hours, right? So you start counting from the time you lose your wudu, and you have to wipe over your slippers. So you don't start from the moment you put them on. Does that make sense? Because sometimes you will make full wudu, put them on, and hold on to that wudu for a couple of prayers. You start doing the calculation, you start calculating a day or 3 days from the moment you lose your wudu and you need to wipe over the slippers. All right, so the calculation will start. I'm going to start, where was the, okay, just. So the conditions are clear, inshallah. All right.
You can write from Fajr to Fajr.
Yeah, so you will wait from Fajr to Fajr. But you won't wait for Fajr again. If you wait for Fajr once, you won't wait for Fajr again. That's the last time you'll wipe. Now if you're, for some reason, you wait for Isha, and then you hold on to your wudu until Fajr, that's fine if you can do that. But most people can't do that, so you're gonna have, but once you wipe for, if you're not traveling, you can only wipe for each prayer once, right? Okay. So, calculation for wiping. Starts after losing wudu, after wearing the socks. That's when you start calculating 24 hours or 3 days, right? فإن مسح في الحضر ثم سافر أو مسح في السفر ثم أقام أتم مسح مقيم. So if you started wiping when you were not traveling, and then you made a decision you're going to travel in the middle of it, you don't get 3 days. You only get that 24 hours, and you have to do a complete wudu after it, right? If you were traveling, and then in the middle of your travel, you stopped. Let's say you started wiping this morning. You were traveling, so you started wiping this morning. Now you have 3 days, right? But then before those 3 days were over, you stopped traveling. You only get 24 hours. You have to start. So let's say that you've been wiping for 2 days, and then you stop traveling. What do? Your 24 hours are already up. You take off your socks and you make full wudu. The only time you can do 3 days in a row is if you start wiping during travel and you continue to travel for 3 days or more, right? Any breaking of that, any exception to that rule means you just do 24 hours. Is that clear, or is that very confusing? You sure? You guys understood that? So you can only, yes?
You got to go with the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
So basically, if there's any time that you were a resident, then it cuts down to
Exactly. So if you were a resident at the beginning, or you became resident somewhere in the middle, you're not traveling anymore, you go back to 24 hours. You can only do 3 days in a row if you started wiping during traveling and you traveled for more than 3 days. That's the only, or you were a traveler for more than 3 days. If you go to Quebec and you're staying there for a week, then you're a traveler for the whole time you're there. You can do 3 days, right? You don't have to be actually traveling for 3 days, as long as you're on travel, the concept of traveling for more than 3 days. Yes?
So let's say you're about to embark on a big trip, and you make a wudu, and you put the socks on. And let's say you're driving to the airport or something. Does that count as you're already on your travel?
No, so the moment you decide you're going to travel, you're traveling. So the moment you make the niyyah of travel, like, okay, I'm leaving, you make wudu and put on your socks, this is travel, because you're leaving and you've already made the intention of leaving, yeah.
If you go to people that go to Lebanon for a month,
Yeah.
the whole time they're there, they can do that.
Just for 3 days.
Only the
So 3 days at a time. So after the end of 3 days, he has to take it off and make, yeah, exactly. You can do that if you're going for a month, that's fine. Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah. Okay. We continue. ويبطل المسح بثلاثة أشياء. And 3 things will invalidate your masah. 3 things will make wiping over your slippers or your socks invalid. You can't do it anymore. Number 1, بخلعهما. So that for the Shafi'i, like I said, taking them off will invalidate it immediately. So the invalidators of wiping. Number 1, taking socks off. Like I said, this is for the Jumhur. There are opinions that, and I do entertain the idea of, if you take it off and you don't lose your wudu during that time and you put them on again, they're still tahir, then you can continue for the original duration of the 24 hours. And I'm okay with that opinion, because the logic is in sync with the whole concept. وانقضاء المدة, end of the period, so that whether it's 24 hours or 3 days, time's up, so you have to take them off and now you have to make full wudu. 3rd, وما يوجب الغسل. So anything that causes you to need ghusl. So anything that causes you to need ghusl, then that you can, you have to take them off and you have to do ghusl. Obviously, you can't have ghusl with your socks on. And that's not going to work. So, okay, so these are the three invalidators of wiping over. Yes?
If you are resident, like I do Zuhr prayer and put the socks on, but at a certain time I decide to travel, would it consider or
No.
need to do again before traveling?
You only get a day. So that way, like I told you, only because you started when you were a resident. You started as a resident. Now, it doesn't matter if you, so you continue for 24 hours and you have to take them off and have a full ghusl. So if
You are in the...
yeah, so you have to, like I said, you have to, if you want to do it for 3 days in a row, you have to start wipe, you have to make wudu and put them on during travel or with the intention of travel there. And you have to be on your way. If you start as a resident or you end up a resident at any point, then you have to go back to, like I said, the lowest common denominator, which is 24 hours. Okay, yes?
Sorry, I know we talked about this, I don't remember that. So when you have wudu before your socks, you take off socks again, do you lose wudu or do you still have wudu?
No, so you don't lose wudu for the Shafi'i and for the Jumhur, but some scholars say you do, but most of them say you don't. But you lose the ability to wipe over them anymore. That's the Shafi'i. And like I said, there's another opinion I entertain. We talked about that. You go back again to the more detailed explanation of this. Yes?
Say in support of the Jumhur, the majority opinion, because there's no ayah, there's no hadith, nothing to indicate that wudu is lost, then the evidence is that if they can't bring anything forth, then therefore there's no nullifiers.
Yes.
In this case, it's just because they don't have an evidence, then we presume that we still have wudu. It can't be lost unless there's a specific evidence.
And just when you go back to what are the invalidators of wudu, right? Go back to the invalidators of, one of them is not taking off your socks when doing masah, so that should make it easy, inshallah. All right. وشرائط التيمم خمسة أشياء. So now we're moving on from this to tayammum. Again, tayammum is something we don't need that often, but sometimes we end up needing to perform. So a tayammum, which is basically it is defined as dry ablution. Right, so tayammum, or what is called dry ablution, has five conditions. So there's 5 conditions for doing tayammum. Number 1, وشرائط التيمم 5 أشياء وجود العذر بسفر أو مرض. So the first condition, the existence of an excuse of travel or illness. That's the first condition. Number 2, وَدُخُولُ وَقْتِ الصَّلَاةِ, the entrance of prayer time. So you can't make tayammum without the intention to make prayer immediately then. So wudu, you don't have to. There doesn't have to be a reason for you to make wudu. There doesn't have to be necessarily a prayer right then and there for you to make wudu. You can make wudu anytime you want. But tayammum, no, there has to be a prayer that you want to perform right then and there. There has to be either dhuhr entered or asr or maghrib or isha or fajr for you to actually be able to make tayammum to begin with. Number 3, وطلب الماء وتعذر استعماله وإعوازه بعد الطلب. Number 3 is searching for water. So you actively have to look for water. So you have to put in some effort in trying to find water somewhere. You can't just say, well, I don't have it right now on me, so I'm tayammum. Go look for water, you may find it somewhere. So yeah, طلب الماء, you have to go look for it. وتعذر استعماله, not being able to use it. So finding water, but not being able to use it. What are examples of not being able to use it? So either sickness or maybe the water itself doesn't qualify as purifying water, right? Because there's different types of water. Some water you may not be able to purify yourself with that type of water, right? Or it's contaminated with something, right? Yes.
You're traveling in the desert, and the amount that you have is just a small amount.
There you go. So it's not enough. You don't have enough to, you need what you have to drink. Yeah, you're gonna die if you don't drink this. So yeah. وإعوازه بعد الطلب. not finding any water, or not finding enough, or not enough. So these are the 5 conditions of you doing tayammum. All right? All right. وَفَرَائِضُهُ أَرْبَعَةُ أَشْيَاء. So this is, again, this is just a revision. All of this was explained in detail. If you missed any of it and you feel like it's too quick of a pace, it's just a revision, go back to the videos and you'll find that we went through them at a much slower pace, in a much slower pace. وَفَرَائِضُهُ أَرْبَعَةُ أَشْيَاء. And there are 4 obligatory things you need to do in order for tayammum to count. All right? Actually, I'll leave that up and I'll just put it somewhere else. So here are the 4 obligatory actions. What are the obligatory actions of tayammum? So we have 4 stuff. Number 1, an-niyyah, right? Always, if you don't know what you're doing, then you're not doing it. So you have to make sure you know what you're doing. So it's always an-niyyah at the beginning. And you'll find this to be for rituals and for everything that you hope to get ajr for. It's always going to be the number 1 thing. You'll find it everywhere. Number 2, وَمَسْحُ الْوَجْهِ, and wiping the face. Number 3, وَالْيَدَيْنِ مَعَ الْمِرْفَقَيْنِ. Yes?
What about like the water that's not usable? Like what about water temperature? Like if the water is too hot or too...
Yeah, so not being able to use it. I gave some examples, but there are many other examples. If it's boiling water and you're gonna, obviously you're not gonna use that. Or if it's too cold and that's what. And there's an example of that in the Sirah, right, where they told him to wipe over his head, even though he had there was an injury in his head, and he wiped. He did full wudu and he wiped over his head, and the guy died. And the Prophet ﷺ got very angry. He said, "Qataluhu." They killed him. They killed him with the lack of fiqh and lack of common sense, to be honest, as well. Like not knowing when to draw the line between understanding that these are rituals, these are religious actions that are not there to threaten your life. If anything, they're there to preserve it. So if there's a reason for you not to use it, threatening your life, it's life-threatening, obviously you don't do it. So there's examples of not being able to use it. There's a lot of examples of you not being able to use that. All right. وَالْيَدَيْنِ مَعَ الْمُرْفَقَيْنِ, and then wiping arms to elbows, up to elbows. Number 4, وَالتَّرْتِيب, sequence. So doing it in this sequence is the final obligatory action. So for tayammum, you have to do it in that sequence. You have to do niyyah. Then what you do is you hit with your hands on turab, and we'll explain in a second what type of dust or what type of sand or soil. And then you wipe the face, and then you hit again, and then you wipe. You should start with wiping your right arm, then your left. Some scholars say that you start with the right and the left, but the Jamhur is on doing the right before the left. So you hit, you wipe, you hit again, then you wipe your arm, and then you wipe this arm. So it's very simple. Again, you may ask, well, what is where's the logic in doing any of this? These are religious purifactory washes. They're religious purifactory washes. They're not physical purifactory washes. Physical purifactory washes is when you have najasa somewhere on your body and you wash it off physically, you bring water and you clean it. That's physical. That is, you don't need any, there's not much fiqh regarding that because it's pretty straightforward. If you have najasa anywhere on your clothing or you wash it off, period. Now these are religious washes, meaning here is the goal is not strictly physically. Actually, making it sound physical is wrong because this is a matter it has a spiritual aspect to it. It has a concept of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So doing this, you say, well, what's the point of doing it? It's religious. It's a ritual that you do before a ritual. And it doesn't have to be physically cleansing for it to actually count. But of course, you're not going to use najasa for it, which is, So between the religious and the physical, there's a lot of overlap. But there's also sometimes exclusivity. There's some issues that are purely religious and some of them that are purely physical. All right.
Quick question about the sequence. You said that even wudu has to have a sequence, yes?
Yeah.
You said that if you go in a pool, have intention to make wudu, once you come out, you have wudu.
Yeah, not for the Shafi'iyya.
Pardon me?
Not for the Shafi'iyya.
Not for Shafi'iyya.
And I talked about that for ghusl, not for wudu. My example was for ghusl.
Oh.
All right, wasn't for wudu. But that works for wudu for the other madhahib, but not for Shafi'i, because they see tartib to be fard. Not everyone does. Yeah.
In the text it says that if it's for ghusl, then the obligation of tartib, doing it in sequence, is dropped.
Yeah.
So it's no longer a condition for the ghusl.
But for a sequence for wudu, is it for all madhab?
No.
And Hanabila.
Yeah.
How does it?
Inshallah. But again, you go back to the videos, you'll find the full discussion. You'll find the full discussion. It's all there because all this we had gone through in detail. I want to be able to inshallah finish today and start salah. وسننه ثلاثة أشياء. The recommended actions of tayammum. There are only three things. What's the first one? Yeah, it's always tasmiyah, right? You'll find it's pretty much the same. Always in sunnah, they say Bismillah before anything you do, especially if it's a religious action. Number two, وتقديم اليمنى على اليسرى, right? Before left. Number three, والموالاة. Consecutively. Right, so doing things consecutively, meaning not leaving long periods of time between one action and the other. Don't, and then go have a chat for 15 minutes and then come back and do it consecutively. But for the Shafi'i, as long as it's not too long, you're good. It's sunnah, it's not fard. Right. وَالَّذِي يُبْطِلُ التَّيَمُّمْ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاء. There are three things that will invalidate tayammum. So the invalidators of tayammum, which will make tayammum no longer possible. What's the first one?
Finding one.
First one, ma abtal al-wudu. Right? Anything that the invalidators, an invalidator of wudu. So anything that invalidated wudu invalidates tayammum. That's first. Number two. Yes. So number two, ورؤية الماء في غير وقت الصلاة. Finding water, but there's addition here for the Shafi'i feast. Outside of prayer time. Now for the Shafi'iyya, if you are praying and then you look for water, you tried your best, you didn't have, and then for some reason water is presented, someone brings, and you're praying, do you leave your prayer and you have to make wudu? No, for the Shafi'iyya you can continue your prayer, right? But then of course you have to make wudu after that. But for this prayer you don't have to stop. But other madhab actually tell you have to sallim and go make wudu, right? So for the Shafi'iyya you don't have to. Now, number three, ridda. So apostasy. Obviously, if you're not a Muslim anymore, then this doesn't apply to you. so there. All right. If you make tayammum, then you commit apostasy, then your tayammum is gone. But of course, we smile, but the ulama would take time in thinking about these things. What will cause your tayammum no longer to be valid? And they would go into quite a lot of detail. So even if it didn't make, you're like, how likely is that ever to happen? They will still, call it out if they feel that even there is a small, possibility of that happening. All right. ويتيمم, we're not there yet. وصاحب الجبائر يمسح عليها, and the person with a cast will wipe over his cast, right? ويتيمم, and then he makes tayammum, ويصلي ولا إعادة عليه إن كان وضعها على طهر. He doesn't have to repeat it if he has worn the cast with tahara to begin with. That's the Shafi'iyya's madhab. Meaning the Shafi'i sees that if you have a cast on, but when you wore the cast you didn't have wudu, then you have to repeat all the prayers after you take it off. That's how the Shafi'iyya see it. Now that's not how everyone sees it, and I side, of course, with the other opinions that because it's a cast and you don't really have much control over how it's going to be put, and you're probably in a lot of pain at the time, so you can't really think about that. So, but for the Shafi'iyya, all the madhahib are okay with you wiping over the cast. Sometimes performing wudu, the Shafi'i are okay with you performing actually just tayammum, specifically if water is going to end up damaging any, causing any actual harm to the limb itself. Some madhahib prefer that you do wudu on every other part and then leave that part out. But the Shafi'i are okay with you doing tayammum. I mean, if you can't make wudu because there's an injury, you have a cast, wipe over the cast and then do tayammum and pray. And if you wore it with tuhar, with purity or tahara to begin with, then you don't have to repeat. And you have to repeat if you didn't, but that's only for the Shafi'iyya. Most of the other madhab don't see that. Okay, so that's regarding wiping over casts. وَيَتَيَمَّمُ لِكُلِّ فَرِيضَةٍ, and you have to make tayammum for each faridah. You can't make tayammum for more than one prayer, fard prayer, that is. So if you made tayammum for Maghrib, when Isha time comes, you have to go and you have to look for water again. And if you can't find water and you meet all the conditions, then you make tayammum again. But you can وَيُصَلِّي بِتَيَمُّمٍ وَاحِدٍ مَا شَاءَ مِنَ النَّوَافِلِ. However, for sunnah prayers, you can pray as many as you want with one tayammum. So let's say you make tayammum for Isha, because you didn't find water. Now you want to pray the sunnah of the Isha and maybe some qiyam al-layl and witr, right? Can you do that, or do you have to make tayammum for each 2 rak'ah? No, you can pray with one tayammum as many sunnah prayers as you want. But for each fard, you have to go and meet the conditions for tayammum all over again. So if you're like, what are the conditions of tayammum? Go back to the text and find out what the conditions of tayammum are, right? Like the ones that we just had up a second ago. So the conditions of tayammum, you have to meet them every time. You have to make sure that there's no water, you look for it, you can't use it, right? All the...
Does it include the traveler who mixes the prayers together?
So for that specifically, they allow for you to use one tayammum, and some of the Shafiee scholars, and for many others, no, you make tayammum for dhuhr, and then you look for water again, even though it was only like 2 minutes, but you go look for and do it again, and then make tayammum again and pray. So there's two opinions regarding that specifically. All right, Faslun, now another chapter. وَكُلُّ مَائِعٍ خَرَجَ مِنَ السَّبِيلَيْنِ نَجِسٍ إِلَّا الْمَنِيِّ. And every fluid, that leaves the sabilayn, the 2 exits of the body, najis is by default impure, illa al-mani, except sperm. It is not impure. So it's not impure. Sperm itself is not an impurity. It's not a najasa. It's actually it's pure. And why we know that, how we know that, is that the Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith that Aisha, there was some on the Prophet ﷺ's garments, so she just scratched it off. Now if it was najis, she would have had to wash it with water. Understanding here? So if it was najis, then you would have to use water to wash it off. But she didn't just scratch it out. That means it wasn't najis to begin with. So if you had, it's the same thing. If you have, if you look at your shirt and there's, ketchup if you were eating, or you just, and it's no longer fluid, but it's crust. Then you can just scratch it out, and you don't have to. But it's just, of course, when you're coming to pray, you're trying to look the best you can. So you scratch out anything, even if it's not najis from your clothing. So she just scratched that out, and that's how we know that mani is. And of course, logically speaking, it is the seed of life. So if it's najis, then so are we. So alhamdulillah. So it doesn't work that way. You go on. وغسل جميع الأبوال والأرواث واجب إلا بول الصبي الذي لم يأكل الطعام فإنه يطهر برش الماء عليه. And rinsing out, or washing out is a better word, washing out all feces, all types of feces, and urine from clothing or garments or anything, or floors or wherever it may be, wajib. This is an obligatory action. Doesn't have to be for salah. Meaning, if you have clothing, or you have there's najasa anywhere in the house or on anything that you're wearing, then it's wajib for you to wash it out, and that is physical purity. There's an example of what physical purity means. Just wash it out. Go take water and wash it until it's no longer there anymore. You have to get rid of it. This is wajib regardless of whether you're going to pray or you're not going to pray. It doesn't make a difference. Right? إِلَّا بَوْلَ الصَّبِيِّ. Except the urine of an infant male who has not eaten any food yet, meaning he's strictly breastfed. He's only drinking his mother's milk. And because there's a few ahadith that talk about something like that, and I talked about the difference of opinions regarding that, and that for the female. Go back to that if you want to know more details. But you can just rinse. You can just spray some water on it, and then you should be good. You should be good to continue. But there's more details of that if you want to go back and listen to it. ولا يعفى عن شيء من النجاسات إلا اليسير من الدم والقيح وما لا نفس له سائلة. And we don't forgive, and no amount of impurities of najasat are forgiven, meaning are left as is, or you can pray with them being there, or you can just function normally with them being there, except very small amounts, in the yasir, small amounts of blood and pus. So with the Shafi'iyya, as long as it's smaller than basically this much, right? So basically a dirham. Anything smaller than that area of blood or pus, you're good. More than that, then you need to go and wash it out, right? Even though blood and pus are najis, but you still have to if it's less than that, then you can pray. If it's more than that, then you can't. وَمَا لَا نَفْسَ لَهُ. Of course, there's a lot of different opinions regarding when it comes to urine and feces and the amounts, and I went into as much detail as I could when I explained this the first time around. So go back to that if you want to know more about that, inshallah. وَمَا لَا نَفْسَ لَهُ سَائِلَةٌ. And anything that does not have blood in it, or a significant amount of blood. So any creature, we're talking about insects here, that don't have as much as that circle of blood in them to begin with, if they fall into a pot of water, or they fall into food, then they don't make it najis. Right? So flies and any type of insects and cockroaches, they don't make anything najis if they fall into anything, water or food. إذا وقع في الإناء ومات فيه فإنه لا ينجسه. So like I said, if a fly falls into a pot and it dies in it, then it make it najis, right? Because you may say, well, it's all animals that die without being slaughtered properly are najis, and this fly should be najis then, and then the water should be najis. No, anything that doesn't have fluid blood or a fluidity of blood within them, like insects, they don't count as najis, and they don't make anything that they touch najis either. All right. وَالْحَيَوَانُ كُلُّهُ طَاهِرٌ. And all animals are طاهر. They are pure by nature. And for the Shafi'iyya, immediately you will say إلا الكلب والخنزير وما تولد منهما أو من أحدهما, except the boar and the canine. Then they are anything that is born from both of them or from one of them. Whether anything that has a canine in its ancestry or a boar in it, then it will also be najis. And this, of course, is the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila. This is how they see boars and canines. And I talked about that in more detail as well. I'll quickly just remind you. The Hanafiyya, for them, the body itself is tahir, and the saliva is najis. For the Malikiyya, neither the body nor the saliva is najis. And of course, that kind of is something you can consider living here in the West when it comes to dealing with dogs all the time. وَالْمَيْتَةُ كُلُّهَا نَجِسَةٌ. And dead animals are all impure, all of them, except the ones that you do tadhkiyah, meaning if you bring a cow or a sheep and you do proper slaughtering, then it's not. But besides that, if it dies, then it's najis. إلا السمك والجراد والآدمي, except for fish, meaning everything in the sea. So everything that dies and everything that is a marine animal, any marine creatures, they are not najis when they die in the sea. And jarad, which is basically insects in general. Insects are not, like we said, are not najis. And human beings. So you don't become najis when you die. As a person, you are tahir during your life, and you are tahir after you die as well. وَيُغْسَلُ الْإِنَاءُ مِنْ وُلُوغِ الْكَلْبِ وَالْخِنْزِيرِ سَبْعَ مَرَّاتٍ إِحْدَاهُنَّ بِالتُّرَابِ. So if a dog or a boar or a pig come and they drink from a pot of water, or they eat from a pot, then you need, for the Shafi'i, you need to wash this pot 7 times with water, one of them with using sand, mixing it with some clean soil from the earth. Okay? And that's for the Shafi'iyya. The Hanafiyya don't see that you should wash it, but not 7 times, and not one of them with turab. And for the Malikiyya, that's not the case at all, because they don't see the saliva to be najis to begin with, so that doesn't apply to them at all. So the Shafi'i and the Hanabi are the ones who accept this ruling of 7 times, one of them with turab, but the Hanafi and the Malikiyya have a different approach to that altogether. وَيُغْسَلُ مِنْ سَائِرِ النَّجَاسَاتِ مَرَّةً تَأْتِي عَلَيْهِ وَالثَّلَاثَةُ أَفْضَلُ. And from every type of najasa that you find, you should wash once with water that hits the actual place of where the najasa is and cleans it out, and you doing it 3 times is better, because, and of course the evidence they have for that is that everything the Prophet ﷺ did, he did it 3 times, so they took that, the Shafi'i took that as an analogy to do it 3 times as well. But doing it once is also enough. All right. وَإِذَا تَخَلَّلَتِ الْخَمْرَةُ بِنَفْسِهَا طَهُرَتْ. And if wine or any type of alcohol turns into vinegar on its own, then it becomes tahir. Because wine or alcohol, any types of alcohol, are najis by nature, right? So if for some reason you're at some celebration and alcohol goes flying and it hits your clothing, then that's najis. You have to wash that off. Okay. Now if that alcohol by itself turns into vinegar, then it becomes tahir. وإن خللت بطرح شيء فيها لم تطهر. For the Shafi'iyya, if it turns into vinegar by putting something in it, then it's not tahir. That's for the Shafi'iyya. All right. For the other madhahib, they have different opinions. So the Shafi'iyya, if you turn alcohol into vinegar by putting something in it, then it doesn't become tahir. It has to turn into vinegar by itself. I mean, just by leaving it for a certain period of time. Okay. And of course, we'll talk about that a bit more in a different section, inshallah. ويخرج من الفرج ثلاثة دماء. And what leaves the reproductive system of a lady are 3 types of blood. دم الحيض والنفاس والاستحاضة. the menstrual period blood and what happens after she gives birth, the after birth blood, and istihada, which is blood that leaves the body in between periods that aren't period blood, meaning just something that happens in between periods. Right, and we'll explain inshallah each one what they're supposed to do. فالحيض, when it comes to the menstrual period, هو الدم الخارج من فرج المرأة على سبيل الصحة من غير سبب الولادة. And this is a type of blood that leaves her body, not because she is ill, and it's not because she gave birth. It's just the normal biological cycle of her life. ولونه أسود محتدم اللذاع, and it has a certain texture to it. It's usually dark and closer to the black color, and it's not a bright color red. And this is of course just and of course medicine today has way more details on these issues and it's a matter of health education that every lady should have, and even men should know about these things, understand them. And of course if the lady, we'll explain that in a second, if that's her time, then she does not pray, right? She doesn't pray during those days. والنفاس هو الدم الخارج عقب الولادة, and the nifas is blood that leaves the lady's body after she gives birth immediately for 40 days, around 40 days. والاستحاضة, and like I said, استحاضة هو الدم الخارج في غير أيام الحيض والنفاس, and it is the blood that leaves the body that is not after she gave birth and is between menstrual periods. وأقل الحيض يوم وليلة, and the shortest time for menstrual period is 1 day. It's 24 hours. وأكثره 15 يوما, and the most is 15 days. غالبه 6 أو 7, most likely 6 or 7 days. Now, this is not based on religious evidence. This was based on medical evidence of the time. So this doesn't apply today. Knowing these things is going to be through your doctor. Through your physician will tell you if she will tell the lady if this is a menstrual period blood or if it's not. So 1 day, usually that means there's something actually abnormal with her. She should go see a physician. If it's 15 days, she should also go see a physician because that's abnormal as well. Anything less than 4 days and more than 8 or 9 is considered relatively abnormal. أقل النفاس لحظة, and the shortest time for post or after birth bleeding is a moment, just some blood leaving. وأكثره 60 يوما, and the longest is 2 months, 60 days. وغالبه 40 يوما, and most likely is 40 days. So it's most likely 40 days, that is true. As far as the other timings, she has to go see a physician. These are not religious timings. Right? So certain things that we read here aren't based on religious evidence, they're based on physical. They're based on medicine and what the scholars knew at that time from medicine being the norm of the knowledge of the time. All right. وأقل الطهر بين الحيضتين 15 يوما ولا حد لأكثره, and the shortest time between menstrual periods is 15 days, and there's no limit to how long a lady can go without a menstrual period, because sometimes they will hit a point where there will be no more periods anymore, right? It'll be the end of it. But again, these things are fixed and looked at and prescribed by physicians and by doctors. وأقل زمن تحيض فيه المرأة 9 سنين, and the youngest age for menstruating is 9 years for a lady. And of course, again, this is all, none of this is religious. This is all just medical. وأقل الحمل 6 أشهر وأكثره 4 سنين, and the lowest time or the shortest time of carrying an infant is 6 months of pregnancy, and the longest is 4 years. And of course, I've never seen 4 years. But again, that was just the knowledge of the time. That's what they understood based on what they saw and what physicians told them at the time. Today we stick to whatever physicians tell us. وَغَالِبُهُ 9 أشهر, and most likely it's going to be 9 months, as we know it to be almost exactly 9 months. وَيَحْرُمُ بِالْحَيْضِ وَالنِّفَاسِ 8 أشياء, and there are 8 things that are haram with hayd and nifas. When she goes through menstrual period or after birth bleeding, there are 8 things that are haram. Now what about istihada? What about, wait, inshallah. الله أكبر الله لا إله إلا الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أجمعين الله الدعوة التامة bad. So tomorrow Maghrib is 7:25, so inshallah 6:25 we'll start. Now this is probably, if not the last week, before last week, because after that I'll shift the Maghrib halaqa to after Isha. Like my Arabic halaqa tafsir will go into after Isha, and then we'll do the Arabic halaqa between Maghrib and Isha. So that's what we'll start doing, not next week, or maybe another 2 weeks or so, and then we'll go back into that inshallah, because 6:25 is a bit early. I'm not sure anyone is going to show up tomorrow. We'll see. Based on what I see tomorrow, if tomorrow only 3-4 people show up, then that'll be the last week, and I'll switch it the week after inshallah. If you guys can still put up with maybe a few more weeks of showing up, that would be nice, because the other halaqa pushing it to after Isha is a bit too early to push it after Isha.
Maybe you're going to have to shift again because of the time change.
No, we'll stay. We'll stick to it. Even with the time change, we'll stick to it. I usually shift my halaqat to after Isha, like the other ones that I do. Once Isha is like around 8:30, so it's not too late. But right now, if I shift it, then the halaqah is going to go until after 10, which for a lot of people is just not easy. So try to make it for the next couple of weeks before Maghrib an hour. Just put up with that, and then inshallah we'll fix it right when the time becomes a bit more permissible. Okay. So there are 8 things. I just want to finish this. I just need to finish this revision so we can start with Salah. Salah is a lot. You'll find Salah to be very interesting, inshallah. You'll learn a lot of stuff. Maybe you know. Sorry? Exam? No. Maybe every 2 or 3 chapters we'll try to do a revision or put out. Again, just keep on listening to the stuff and try to keep up with the material, inshallah.
Do you think that after what?
So, actions that are haram when the lady is going through hayd or nifas, when she's going through hayd or nifas. Now, regarding istihada, which is the bleeding between the 2 periods, she doesn't stop praying for that, and she doesn't change anything for that. If a lady bleeds a bit between the menstrual periods, nothing happens. She can read her Quran, she can do her prayers, totally normal. She should see a physician, however, to make sure that that's not something that that needs to be checked out. But during the menstrual period and during after birth bleeding, there are 8 things that are haram. 1, as-salah, so she cannot pray. Number 2, as-sawm, so she cannot fast. Now she doesn't have to repeat her prayers, but she has to repeat the days that she lost for fasting. Wa qira'atul Quran, and of course reading Quran, and that is something that is different. I talked about it in a bit more detail in the time before last time. There's a difference of opinion regarding among scholars whether it's okay for her to read or not to read. So there's more than one opinion regarding that.
These are both for hayd and nifas.
Yeah, so for hayd and nifas, these are the things that she cannot do. وَمَسُّ الْمُصْحَفِ وَحَمْلُهُ, and carrying the Quran and reading, touching the Quran. And again, there's a difference of opinion regarding that as well. وَدُخُولُ الْمَسْجِدِ, and entering a masjid, and there's also difference of opinion regarding that. So those 3 things specifically, there's difference of opinion regarding them amongst scholars, whether it's haram for her. I tend to side by the other opinion of it being permissible for these 3 things. وَالطَّوَافِ, and doing tawaf. Anything that makes salah haram, tawaf is haram as well, because salah and tawaf are synonymous, and they're the same thing. وَالْوَطْءُ, which is basically intercourse, that's haram. وَالْإِسْتِمْتَاعُ بِمَا بَيْنَ السُّرَّةِ وَالرُّكْبَةِ, and then sexual pleasure that is between the navel and the knee. And of course that's also there's a difference of opinion. And this is here for the Shafi'i, what they mean is with no clothing being worn. Now if it's on top of clothing, that is fine for all madhahib. But without clothing, for the Shafi'i, they see it to be unpermissible. For others, there's different opinions regarding that as well. وَيَحْرُمُ, of course that's important for married people. If you're not married, don't listen to it. Ask me about it later when you get married, inshallah. وَيَحْرُمُ عَلَى الْجُنُوبِ خَمْسَةُ أَشْيَاء, and there are 5 things that are haram for someone who is junub. So for a man who has had intercourse or ejaculated, then number 1 is salah. You cannot pray until you have ghusl. وَقِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ, and you cannot read Quran. Again, there's a difference of opinion regarding reciting Quran for the junub. وَمَسُّ الْمُصْحَفِ وَحَمْلُهُ, and touching the mushaf and carrying it. Also there's a difference of opinion regarding that as well. وَالطَّوَافِ, like I said, if you can't pray, then you can't do tawaf, and that is agreed upon. وَاللُّبْثُ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ, and then hanging around in the masjid. If you're junub, you should go have ghusl and then come stay in the masjid. Also, this is a matter of difference of opinion as well. وَيَحْرُمُ عَلَى الْمُحْدِثِ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاء, and there are 3 things that are haram for someone who does not have wudu. Someone who just doesn't have wudu, meaning he just leaked some gas or woke up from sleep and didn't make wudu. So there's 3 things that you cannot perform. Number 1 is salah, obviously. Number 2 is tawaf. Like I said, whenever you see salah, tawaf is the exact same thing. وَمَسُّ الْمُصْحَفِ وَحَمْلُهُ, and touching the mushaf and carrying it, or opening it and reading with it. And again, there's a difference of opinion regarding that as well. And inshallah, in different sessions or in the future, I will go into a bit more detail about what the scholars said and who said what and how it all kind of comes through. But for now, I just want you to know the basics. So that's the end of the chapter of purity or purification. We will start, inshallah. We do have 10 more minutes. If you guys want to leave, unless you're tired. Yeah.
You said that if you're junub, you can't can you read Quran or not?
Yeah. So for the Shafi'i, if you're junub, you can't read Quran, you can't hold the Quran, and you shouldn't hang around the masjid.
What about like Hanafiya or Hanbali?
Yeah, so there's different. Go back to the videos and you'll hear the different, the breakdown of the opinions, because we went into a bit more detail in the last number of times. Okay, we'll stop with that. We'll start fresh, inshallah, next time with the chapter of salah. Now I will do when we start with the chapter of salah, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, I'll go into a bit more detail regarding fiqh muqaran, meaning and the different schools of thought and their opinions, because this is a very important issue. Meaning, when it comes to salah, it's important that you know as much as you can about it. It'll make it quicker for us when we study the other madhahib. When we study another text, you'll find that okay, we've already covered most of this, so we can go through it quicker. But I will take some time to make sure that you guys are all kind of on clear on what the madhahib say regarding salah, specifically salah, because I think it's very important, and it's something that we should all have a wide or a broad understanding of the different opinions that exist regarding it. Okay, jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallah bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Barakallahu fikum. Wa iyyakum inshallah.